Hey there. So I hope you made it through another week of the craziness. I know things are kind of crazy for me, but oh well. This is our world now, right? And we're living through it. All right. So this week I've got a bit of a tip, something that's probably been talked about a lot on the internet already, but I'll throw my 2 cents in because why not, right? We're going to talk about public DNS resolvers this week. And if you are not familiar with what they are, this will explain it to you and why you might want to include some in your list of DNS servers. So first of all, a public DNS resolver. What is DNS to begin with? Well, the nice analogy that everybody uses is DNS is like the internet's phone book. You remember www.facebook.com. You type that in to go to the website. But, the computer network, the IP network, needs to know what address that actually is. So the domain name system, which is DNS, that's the system that takes that friendly name that you know, www.facebook.com, and converts it into the IP address, that can be routed. And as a result, the page comes back delivered to you, and that's what you're looking for. So that's what DNS really at a basic level does. Now, most people at home are going to simply use the DNS server that's provided by their ISP, their internet service provider. And a lot of times that's just fine. In fact, here where I live, my telephone company's DNS servers are the fastest by far to anything else that is near me. So they are my primary DNS servers. But I also have a few extra public DNS resolvers as well, just in case. So what is a public DNS resolver? Well, a public DNS resolver is one that's available to the public, right? So my query is if I say www.facebook.com, and DNS will say, well, I don't know where that is. I got to find out. So it'll ask the DNS server that you have configured. That DNS server will look at the address, and if it knows it, it'll give it back to you. If it doesn't, it will go up the tree to try and find that address for that website that you've given it. Now, in most cases, it's pretty quick. You ask for it, you get the address back, things move along. But sometimes DNS servers can be very slow, or they don't respond correctly, or they don't respond at all, right? Things can go wrong. So most network pieces of network gear, when they're doing DNS, will have a primary and a secondary DNS server. And that's just two that can back up, in case one fails. It's actually good to have more than just those two. And you can usually specify more. In Windows, you can go into the configuration for IP and specify additional DNS servers. And in those additional DNS servers, it might be good to specify an open DNS resolver. There's a handful of them that are pretty popular. I think everybody has heard of Open DNS in the past. You probably know about Google DNS or Quad9. But there's a bunch of them, including a bunch you may not have heard of, like the Canadian Internet Registry Authority's Canadian Shield DNS servers. So, there's lots of them. And actually, if you go Googling, public DNS resolvers, you'll be able to come up with a massive list of servers that are available to you to use to resolve your DNS queries. So, how do you know what you should use? Whether you should use an open DNS server or not? Well, fortunately, there are tools that will let you actually measure the response that you get, specifically where you are, to the various DNS servers that are around you. The one that I like to use is from Steve Gibson. It's GRC's, what's it called? DNS Bench, I think is what it's called. There's another one called Name Bench, which does the same kind of thing. But this basically takes a list of public DNS servers and starts testing them to see how fast they are for you where you are. Now, depending on where you are in the world, different servers will respond differently. If you're in the US, Google DNS is probably pretty good. The Quad9 is supposed to be really good. Cloudflare's 1.1.1.1 is supposed to be really good. But here where I live on the Canadian prairie, those are not very good for me. In fact, the CIRA's Canadian Shield DNS is not very good for me. Like I said, for me, my internet provider actually provides me the fastest DNS resolutions by far of any other one. So that's what I use. But, it might be different where you live. If I lived in Toronto, the story might be a little bit different, right? Also remember that if you have your own router in front of your internet connection, you might be getting your DNS from that router, and that router in turn is getting it from your ISP. But if that router is not very good, the DNS server is not very fast, it may have very poor performance, right? It may be making queries there and they might be slow. And you might be better off querying a different resolver to get a faster result. And that will just make your internet feel a lot more responsive and just be nicer to use, I guess is what I'm saying. So, adding these open DNS resolvers can be really good, depending on where you are, like I said, and how quickly these various DNS servers are responding to you. So if that's not something you've ever checked out, you might want to go to the grc.com website, download DNS Bench, give it a whirl. You might have to do an initial update of the DNS servers, and it can do that automatically, or you might be better off going to a website like public-dns.info, for instance, and looking up resolvers, open resolvers that are physically closer to where you are. Because again, physical distance is not always, but is often a good representation of how quickly responses will come back to you. So it really depends. It depends on a lot of factors. That's why you got to test it, right? So there. Now you know a way to make your internet faster and maybe help you find internet addresses that your own ISP might not be resolving for you for whatever reason. You can use an open public resolver to do that. Alrighty. I feel like this week's tip's a little bit lacking, but you know what? It's been so crazy. This is what you get this week. Alrighty. Again, any questions, shoot me a message and I will answer. Hey, stay safe and take care.